The world ended, not with explosions or screams, but with silence. A silence so deep that it strangled the very pulse of the earth. It began on a Sunday morning in late October, when the skies above North Dakota turned an unnatural shade of gray and the wind carried whispers that no one could quite explain. News channels went offline one by one, emergency broadcasts fizzled into static, and within hours, the world's greatest cities became graveyards of sound. In the small, forgotten town of Linton Hollow, a place with fewer than 800 souls, the silence arrived like a fog, creeping through every window, filling every breath, until even the birds stopped singing. Ethan Cole was the first to notice something wasn't right. A former paramedic who had returned to his hometown after losing his job in Chicago, Ethan woke up to find his dog, Baxter, pacing at the door, growling low at nothing. He stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, and realized what was wrong: no engines, no voices, no buzzing of power lines. The world had gone eerily still. At first, he thought it was just a power outage, maybe a cell tower failure. But when he drove into town, the streets were empty. The diner, which normally smelled of bacon and burnt coffee, was abandoned, half-eaten meals left on tables, the jukebox frozen mid-song. By noon, Ethan met others who had noticed the same thing. Olivia Parker, a young journalist who had returned to Linton Hollow to care for her sick mother, was standing by the community center with her phone raised, muttering that she couldn't get a signal. She was joined by Sheriff Dean Holloway, an older man with a heavy mustache and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in years. Then came Maddie Rhodes, the high school science teacher who'd been using the school lab generator to try to pick up radio signals, but all she got was white noise, sometimes broken by faint, distorted moans. The silence, they realized, wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. That night, when the moon rose crimson behind the hills, the first screams shattered the quiet. Ethan was the first to respond, instinct driving him back toward town. He found Olivia hiding behind her car, flashlight trembling in her grip. Across the street, something was moving, slow, staggering, dragging one leg. A man, or what used to be one. His skin was pale, almost translucent, his eyes clouded white. The smell hit first, rot and something chemical, like burned plastic. "Stay back!" Ethan shouted, but the figure didn't stop. It lunged, fast and animal-like, and Ethan barely managed to shove it off with a crowbar he'd grabbed from his truck. When the thing hit the pavement, its skull cracked open, and from the wound oozed a dark, pulsing fluid that hissed when it touched the ground. They weren't alone. More of them came from the shadows, men, women, even children, all moving with jerky, unnatural motions. Olivia's screams echoed as they ran, the sound slicing through the night air. By the time they reached the sheriff's office, Holloway already had the place barricaded. "They're not human anymore," he said, voice trembling but firm. "They're dead, or something worse." Inside, they found Maddie hunched over a radio receiver. "I caught something," she whispered, twisting the dials. For a moment, the static cleared, and a male voice came through, faint but urgent. "This is Dr. Keller from the Central Research Division. If anyone can hear me, the experiment wasn't supposed to." Then a scream, and the line went dead. Ethan and Olivia exchanged glances. "Experiment?" Olivia whispered. Maddie nodded slowly. "Linton Hollow isn't on any map for a reason," she said. "I think this town was part of something. A test." Outside, the moaning grew louder, dozens, maybe hundreds of voices rising in dreadful harmony. The dead were gathering. Holloway loaded a shotgun, his hands steady but his eyes uncertain. "Whatever this is, we need to survive the night," he said. Ethan looked out through the blinds. The streetlights flickered weakly, casting long, broken shadows. Bodies shuffled past, once neighbors, now grotesque reflections of life. And somewhere beyond them, deep in the forest, a strange humming sound pulsed, rhythmic and metallic, as if the earth itself were breathing. "The world didn't go silent," Ethan murmured. It was muted, for a reason. Then the generator cut out. Darkness swallowed them whole. The moaning stopped. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence again, until the faint sound of knocking echoed through the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. And then a voice. A voice that sounded exactly like Ethan's own, whispering from the other side. "Let me in." The voice that echoed through the dark was unmistakably Ethan's, low, rough, and trembling with the exact tone he'd just heard from his own throat seconds before. Everyone in the room froze. Olivia's flashlight beam jittered across the sheriff's office walls, catching frightened eyes and trembling hands. "That's not funny," Sheriff Holloway muttered, his finger twitching near the trigger of his shotgun. Ethan didn't move. He was staring at the door like it might reach out and grab him. The voice came again, quieter this time. "Please, open the door." "They're coming," Maddie whispered. "It's mimicking you." The pounding began, heavy thuds that made the walls shake. Holloway barked an order for everyone to back away from the entrance. The reinforced metal frame groaned under the strain. Ethan grabbed a fire axe from the wall and motioned toward the rear exit. "We can't stay here," he said. "They know we're inside." They burst out through the back alley, moving through shadows as the night carried a chorus of dragging footsteps and distant screams. The town of Linton Hollow looked like a ghost had torn through it, cars still running with no drivers, porch lights flickering over bloody handprints, store signs swaying in the wind. The smell of decay mixed with something electric, like burnt copper. Olivia stumbled as they passed a school bus crashed into a lamppost. Its doors were open, and inside, silhouettes twitched in the dark, softly whispering words that didn't sound human anymore. Ethan led them toward the outskirts, toward an old radio tower where Maddie believed the strange signal had originated. "If we can get higher ground, maybe we'll catch more from that doctor," she said. Her voice was shaky but determined. She clutched a small portable radio to her chest like it was the last thread of sanity holding her together. Holloway followed behind, muttering prayers under his breath. Halfway there, Olivia stopped. "Wait, do you hear that?" It wasn't the moaning anymore, it was humming. A deep, mechanical rhythm, like a giant machine buried beneath the earth. The ground vibrated faintly beneath their feet. Maddie turned pale. That sound, it's resonating on a frequency lower than human hearing. It could be a transmitter, or, she trailed off as the shadows around them seemed to shift. Something moved in the fog, tall, misshapen figures, half hidden by the drifting mist. The group ducked behind a pickup truck as the shapes shuffled closer. Ethan peeked out, and froze. These weren't the same reanimated bodies as before. Their flesh glistened as if melted and fused with metal. Small blinking lights pulsed beneath their skin, and when they exhaled, steam hissed from their mouths. One of them tilted its head unnaturally far to the side, as if sniffing the air. Its voice, a crackling distortion of static, murmured, frequency, restored. Maddie's eyes went wide. "They're evolving." Before they could move, one of the creatures turned its glowing eyes toward them. Ethan didn't hesitate, he swung the axe, cleaving through its neck in one motion. Sparks flew where blood should have been. The creature convulsed violently, then collapsed, its body twitching and emitting a faint high-pitched whine before falling silent. "Run!" Ethan yelled. They sprinted toward the radio tower, the hum growing louder with each step. When they reached the base, they found the chain-link fence torn open, as though something enormous had forced its way through. The ground was scorched, the dirt blackened in a circular pattern around the tower. Holloway shined his flashlight upward, the top of the structure was glowing faintly red. Maddie knelt beside a small generator, wires snaking into the soil. "Someone's been using this as a relay," she said. "But for what?" Olivia pointed to something half-buried nearby, a briefcase marked with a faded government insignia, CRD-12. "Central Research Division," she said quietly. "That's the voice we heard." Maddie opened it. Inside were blueprints, labeled Project Rebirth, Phase 3, Neural Frequency Synchronization. And beneath the papers, a small device pulsing with the same crimson glow as the tower. This wasn't a virus, Maddie whispered. It was a signal. A frequency that reanimated brain tissue through electromagnetic stimulation. But something went wrong, it spread uncontrollably. Before Ethan could respond, the radio in Maddie's hand crackled. A distorted voice came through, faint, panicked, and wet with static. If you can hear this, shut it down. Don't let the pulse reach. The voice was cut off by an ear-piercing shriek. The red light on the device flared, and the ground trembled violently. Holloway swore and grabbed the case. We're leaving. But then, from the distance, came a sound that froze them in place. Hundreds of voices, some human, some not, chanting in perfect unison. Their words were indecipherable, but their rhythm matched the hum of the machine. The entire tower began to sway. Olivia clutched Ethan's arm. What's happening? Ethan looked up at the crimson light as it pulsed faster, casting their shadows in jagged motion. The world's silence wasn't natural, he said. It was containment. And we just broke it. The hum deepened, and far away, something massive stirred beneath the ground. The earth convulsed beneath their feet, the radio tower swaying violently as a deep rumble tore through the soil. Ethan grabbed the edge of the briefcase before it could slide away, clutching it to his chest as Olivia screamed for everyone to run. Maddie fell to her knees, her fingers pressed into the vibrating dirt. It's not an earthquake, she gasped. It's alive. The ground split open near the base of the tower with a sound like metal tearing. From the fissure rose a wave of cold, blue light that shimmered across the town like liquid lightning. The red glow from the tower flickered, twisting into an eerie violet as the two forces collided, one mechanical, the other almost sentient. Ethan pulled Maddie to her feet and sprinted toward the nearby hills, dragging her along as the rumbling intensified. Behind them, the tower bent and snapped in half with a thunderous crack, its fragments raining down in a shower of sparks. Sheriff Holloway brought up the rear, his shotgun clutched tight, his breathing ragged. We can't keep running blind, he shouted. We need somewhere to hold up before this ground swallows us whole. Olivia pointed toward an old service tunnel near the abandoned railway. There. That's where my dad used to take me hunting when the storms hit. It goes deep under the ridge. They reached the tunnel entrance just as the sky erupted, lightning flashing purple against the clouds, casting shadows that didn't match the people standing beneath them. For a second, Ethan saw something impossible, his own shadow turning its head to look back at him, even though he wasn't moving. He blinked, and it was gone. Inside the tunnel, the air was damp and thick with the smell of rust. The silence returned, that same suffocating quiet that had started everything. Holloway set up a lantern and took position by the entrance while the others caught their breath. Maddie was trembling, her voice a whisper. That pulse we unleashed, it's calling to something. She pulled out the damaged radio from her bag, adjusting the dials with shaking hands. Through the static came fragmented voices, some crying for help, others muttering in mechanical tones. Then, suddenly, one came through clear, Linton Hollow containment breach confirmed. Protocol world silence compromised. All frequencies infected. Do not respond. Do not, the line cut to static again. Ethan's brow furrowed. Containment breach? That means they knew about this. They planned for silence to keep whatever this is from spreading. Olivia's eyes darted between them. If it's spreading through frequency, that means the world's communication networks, radios, satellites, everything could be infected. Maddie nodded grimly. And if the pulse synchronizes again, it'll reach anyone still alive. A sound echoed deeper in the tunnel, the scrape of metal against stone. Holloway aimed his shotgun into the darkness. We're not alone down here. A dim blue light began to pulse from the shadows, matching the rhythm of the earlier tremor. Ethan motioned for everyone to stay quiet as he moved forward, axe in hand. The light revealed the source, a man, or what used to be one, pinned beneath a collapsed beam. His body glowed faintly, veins illuminated by that same blue energy. His eyes opened slowly, and when he spoke, his voice carried a digital distortion. "You shouldn't have turned it back on." Olivia gasped. "You're Dr. Keller." The man smiled faintly, blood trickling from his mouth. He rasped. The silence was mercy. It wasn't meant to punish the living. It was meant to keep the dead from hearing the world again. Ethan crouched beside him. "What do you mean?" Keller's hand trembled as he pointed upward. "The restless, they're drawn to sound. Every vibration, every voice, it wakes them. The great silence was the only way to contain them. When you destroyed the pulse barrier, you invited them back." His voice cracked, turning almost mechanical. "They're not corpses anymore, they're transmitters." Before they could question him further, Keller's body convulsed violently. Blue light poured from his mouth and eyes, and a piercing tone erupted from his throat, shattering the lantern glass. Maddie screamed and covered her ears as blood began to drip from them. Ethan swung the axe, silencing the sound, but it was too late. The tunnel walls began to shake again, the vibrations coming closer from outside. "They heard us," Olivia whispered. Outside, the moaning had returned, but now it was organized, rhythmic, like a choir chanting in unison. The tunnel mouth flickered with blue light as silhouettes appeared, dozens of them, their bodies twitching in time with the pulse. Holloway fired a blast from his shotgun, the echo deafening in the confined space. "Move! Go deeper," he shouted. They ran through the twisting tunnel until the path split into two. Ethan turned left, dragging the others behind him, just as the entrance collapsed under the weight of something enormous. Dust filled the air. The world above them groaned and shifted, as though the land itself were breathing again. When they finally stopped, Maddie's voice trembled. If silence kept them contained, then sound itself is the weapon they use. Ethan stared down at the glowing briefcase in his hand, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. "Then we need to find the source of the first signal," he said grimly. "And end it, before the whole world starts listening." From far above, muffled through layers of earth, came a chilling sound, the static-laced voice of a news anchor declaring, "This is an emergency broadcast." The world was waking up again. The echo of the emergency broadcast rolled through the soil like thunder from a forgotten storm. It was distant, fractured by static, but its meaning was unmistakable. The great silence had ended. Somewhere above them, the world was beginning to stir again, unaware that the noise itself was calling death closer. Ethan tightened his grip on the glowing briefcase as the group pushed deeper into the old service tunnel, the air growing colder with every step. The narrow passage opened into an underground maintenance chamber, its walls lined with rusted pipes and corroded control panels. Faded stencils on the metal doors read CRDAUX Station 9. Maddie brushed the dust from one of the panels, revealing a symbol, the same insignia that had marked the briefcase. "Central Research Division," she whispered. "We're under one of their hidden facilities." Sheriff Holloway wiped sweat from his brow. "So this is where it started." Olivia stepped closer to the wall, running her flashlight over a series of etched carvings. They weren't part of the machinery, they looked old, almost tribal, spirals and symbols of eyes and waves carved deep into the concrete. "These markings, they're older than this facility," she said softly. "Like someone built this place over something ancient." Before anyone could respond, the faint hum returned, not from outside this time, but from beneath their feet. The floor began to vibrate subtly, the same low frequency they'd felt when the tower collapsed. Maddie adjusted the radio she'd been carrying, and the static filled the room again, broken by faint, rhythmic clicks. She frowned. "That's not interference. That's code, some kind of signal pattern." The briefcase in Ethan's hand began to respond, pulsing in perfect time with the radio. "It's syncing," Maddie said. "This case isn't just a piece of equipment, it's a key." Ethan glanced around. "Then what does it unlock?" The answer came when a deep groan echoed through the chamber, followed by a metallic grinding sound. One of the walls, the one with the carvings, began to slide open, revealing a hidden stairway spiraling down into darkness. A gust of cold air rushed out, carrying the faint scent of decay and something metallic. Holloway raised his shotgun. "We're not going down there," he muttered. But Ethan was already moving toward the stairs. "If this is where the first signal came from, it's the only chance we've got to stop it." Olivia hesitated for a heartbeat, then followed. Maddie took a deep breath and gripped her radio tight before stepping into the dark. Holloway cursed under his breath and went last, muttering that this would be the death of them all. The deeper they went, the louder the hum grew. The walls here were smooth, not stone or concrete, but something glassy and black that reflected their flashlights in warped shapes. Shadows stretched unnaturally, distorting their reflections into grotesque, twitching figures. At the bottom, they reached a vast underground chamber filled with strange machinery that pulsed with dim blue light. In the center stood a massive cylindrical device, like a pillar made of bone and steel, its surface etched with the same carvings they'd seen above. Cables snaked out from its base into the ground, pulsing faintly as if alive. Maddie approached cautiously. This must be the source node, the central emitter. The thing Keller was trying to keep silent. She reached toward the surface, but the moment her hand came close, her body seized. Blue light surged up her arm, and her voice distorted with static. "It's reading us," she gasped. "It's alive." Ethan pulled her back, breaking the connection. The machine responded immediately, the hum became a roar, and lights flickered across the chamber walls. Olivia stumbled backward as dozens of circular pods along the walls began to crack open. Inside each one were human shapes, suspended in translucent fluid, their faces peaceful, their skin marked with glowing symbols. Holloway fired at one of the pods, shattering the glass. The liquid spilled out, and the body inside slumped forward, then stood up. Its eyes opened, burning with cold blue fire. More pods began to open, the sound of cracking glass echoing like ice breaking over a frozen lake. Maddie's voice trembled. "They're not just the dead. They were made here." This was the beginning. Ethan opened the briefcase, desperate. Inside, a control interface flickered to life, displaying an option that read, "Signal Reversal Protocol, Activate." He hesitated. "If this reverses the frequency, it could kill everything it's connected to," he said. "That includes us." Olivia stepped forward, her voice steady. "If we don't, it won't matter. The whole world will hear the signal." Ethan pressed the button. The chamber erupted in a blinding flash. A shockwave of blue light surged outward, and every awakened corpse let out a synchronized scream, a sound that was not pain, but fury. The wave tore through the facility, through the tunnels, up into the world above. For a moment, it felt like time itself stopped. When the light faded, the chamber fell silent. Then, from the far end of the room, a single pod remained sealed. Inside, a figure stirred, human, but different. Its eyes opened, glowing not blue but a deep, endless red. It smiled. Maddie's voice broke the silence. "Ethan. I don't think we stopped it. I think we woke something worse." The silence after the shockwave was suffocating, heavier than before, as if the air itself refused to move. Dust drifted lazily through the blue haze that lingered in the underground chamber. The smell of ozone and decay hung thick. Ethan blinked through the light's afterglow, the control tablet still warm in his hand. Around him, the machines were dead, their once pulsing glow now dimmed to a dull gray. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like it was over. Then the pod hissed. A sharp crack split the air as fissures ran across the last containment unit. The glass fractured, fluid spilling onto the floor in slow, rippling waves. Inside, the figure's eyes burned crimson, its expression almost human. It stepped out with unnerving grace, water streaming off its pale skin. It didn't stagger or twitch like the other reanimated ones. It stood tall, composed, calm in the ruin. Maddie stumbled backward, clutching her radio like a talisman. "It's different," she whispered. "It's aware." Sheriff Holloway raised his shotgun, but the figure's head tilted slightly, its gaze fixing on him with unnatural precision. "Don't," it said, and the voice was smooth, measured, human. The sound of it sent shivers through all of them. It wasn't just speaking, it was resonating. The vibration of its words buzzed inside their skulls like a low hum. Ethan's hand tightened on the axe. "Who are you?" The figure smiled faintly. "I am the signal. The one you tried to silence. They called me Genesis." Maddie shook her head. "Impossible. You're part of the experiment, the neural synchronization project." "I am the result," Genesis interrupted softly. "The world sought to mute creation's echo. The great silence was their attempt to contain me. But you turned the sound back on." Olivia stepped forward, voice trembling. "We didn't mean to release anything. We were just trying to survive." Genesis turned its gaze toward her, its red eyes softening. "Survival is the root of all noise. It's what woke me the first time." Its tone shifted, and the humming in the chamber deepened, vibrating the walls. "Every cry, every scream, every heartbeat, they all called to me." The silence was never peace. It was exile. The lights above flickered weakly. Ethan could feel it, the pulse in the air returning, like the tower's hum before it fell. "You're rebuilding the signal," he said. Genesis nodded, a small, sorrowful smile crossing its face. "It was never meant to end. You cannot silence what was born from the sound of life itself." Without warning, the machines around the chamber flickered back to life. Screens filled with indecipherable code, and the floor began to glow with intricate circuits that hadn't been visible before. The hum grew louder, steady, like a mechanical heartbeat. Holloway fired a shot, the blast echoing in the confined space, but Genesis moved faster than anything human, appearing behind him in an instant. It touched the sheriff's shoulder gently. "Sound gives life," it whispered. The sheriff convulsed. His eyes turned black, and his veins lit up with pulsing red light. When his mouth opened, the same static distortion poured out that had once come from Dr. Keller's throat. Ethan didn't hesitate, he swung the axe, and Holloway fell, finally silent. Maddie was crying now, her face streaked with dirt and tears. "We can't fight it, it's in the air, the machines, even us." Ethan looked at the briefcase, still dimly glowing. "We started it with the reversal, maybe we can overload it. Push it beyond control." Olivia nodded quickly, understanding his thought. Like canceling a sound wave, one frequency destroying the other. Maddie's hands trembled as she worked the interface, her voice trembling. "If I reroute the polarity, it'll create a counterpulse. But if we're too close when it triggers..." Ethan finished for her. "We won't have time to run." Genesis watched them, almost curiously, as if fascinated by the defiance of its creator's children. "You think destruction will bring silence again," it said, stepping closer. "But even silence hums if you listen deeply enough." Ethan raised the axe as Maddie hit the final command. The lights exploded into brilliance. A second pulse erupted, louder, sharper, like the scream of the earth itself. Genesis staggered, its body convulsing as the red in its eyes flickered violently. "You cannot erase sound," it hissed, before the chamber erupted in white. When the light faded, everything was still. The hum was gone. Ethan blinked, disoriented. Maddie lay unconscious beside the shattered briefcase, smoke rising from its circuitry. Olivia coughed, her ears bleeding from the blast's intensity. The walls around them were cracked, and through them, faint rays of dawn light filtered in from above. "It's over," Olivia whispered. Ethan looked toward the spot where Genesis had stood. Nothing remained, only a faint smear of red light, slowly fading into the floor. But then, through the broken radio on Maddie's belt, a faint whisper crackled, "Sound gives life." And somewhere, far above the ruined chamber, the wind began to hum again. Ethan exhaled slowly. "No," he said. "It's not over. It's changing." From the distance, faintly carried on the morning breeze, came the echo of thousands of voices, whispering in perfect unison. Morning arrived over Linton Hollow like a pale ghost. The town, once silent and abandoned, now echoed faintly with strange vibrations, a low hum beneath the wind, like a heartbeat buried in the earth. The sun barely cut through the gray mist, painting everything in tones of rust and bone. Ethan, Olivia, and Maddie emerged from the collapsed access tunnel, their bodies battered and lungs aching from the dust. The ground behind them was cracked open where the facility had imploded, a smoking scar on the land. Maddie leaned heavily on Olivia, still dizzy from the counterpulse. "I thought we stopped it," she murmured weakly. "We reversed the signal, it should have ended." Ethan scanned the horizon. The radio towers across the ridge stood in ruins, yet faint, flickering lights blinked on their broken spires. "No," he said quietly. "We killed the body, not the voice." The air buzzed faintly with static. From somewhere in the distance came the faint hum of generators, or maybe something else imitating them. Olivia glanced at Ethan uneasily. "What if the silence was never meant to stop it?" she said. "What if it was the only thing keeping it contained, and now it's spreading again, through what's left of the signal network?" Before Ethan could respond, Maddie's radio crackled to life. At first, it was only static, then came faint whispers, like voices speaking beneath water. "Frequency, migration, north sector, active." Maddie frowned and adjusted the dial. "It's transmitting through emergency channels," she said. "That shouldn't be possible, every system's fried." "Unless it's rebuilding them," Ethan muttered. "Adapting." They moved carefully through the outskirts of town, the streets now coated in ash and dust. The corpses of the earlier infected lay where they'd fallen, lifeless and still, but as they passed, Ethan noticed something unsettling. Their bodies weren't decomposing. Instead, their skin had hardened, thin lines of black metal threading through their flesh like veins. Olivia caught sight of one of them twitching faintly as they passed. "They're changing," she whispered. A distant siren began to wail. It wasn't mechanical, it was human, or something pretending to be. The sound shifted from a cry into a rhythmic tone that resonated with the hum in the air. Maddie covered her ears, wincing. "It's modulating through sound waves again, it's trying to sync with us." They ducked into the remains of an old diner. The windows were shattered, and a layer of dust covered the tables where coffee cups still sat untouched from that first silent day. Ethan found a half-working generator in the back and managed to power up a single light. Maddie immediately set up her damaged tablet, patching it into the briefcase's remnants. "The signal's not centralized anymore," she explained. "It's fragmented, splitting itself across smaller frequencies, using every piece of tech it can find as a transmitter. Phones, radios, even the power grid." Olivia leaned over her shoulder. "So, if we destroy the sources, we might weaken it." Maddie hesitated. "Maybe. But it's everywhere now. It doesn't just exist in machines, it's inside living brains too. The moment anyone hears it long enough, it rewrites them." A noise outside cut through their conversation, a soft tapping, deliberate, like knuckles against glass. Olivia turned toward the window, her flashlight trembling in her hand. Beyond the fog, a figure stood, perfectly still, face pressed against the shattered glass. Its eyes were hollow, but its mouth was moving, whispering something too quiet to hear. Then another figure appeared beside it. And another. Within seconds, dozens stood outside the diner, all mouthing the same silent words. Ethan's blood ran cold. "They're transmitting silently." Maddie nodded, voice shaking. "Subsonic resonance. Even if we can't hear it, it's still spreading." The light above them flickered, once, twice, then burst. In the darkness, the whispering became audible, low and vibrating like the purr of an engine. "Sound gives life." Ethan grabbed Maddie's radio and hurled it across the room, smashing it. The voices stopped instantly. The silence that followed was deafening, almost holy. But then, through the still air, came a new sound, the distant whine of rotors. A helicopter. They rushed outside, waving frantically as the aircraft descended through the fog. The logo on its side bore the same insignia, CRD. Soldiers in dark suits motioned for them to approach, their faces hidden behind tinted visors. One of them shouted through a megaphone, "Identify yourselves. We're here to extract survivors." Maddie hesitated. CRD? After what we saw, how can we trust them? Ethan's instincts screamed at him, but the figures were armed, and exhaustion weighed too heavy to argue. They climbed aboard. The door slammed shut, sealing out the fog and the whispers. The helicopter rose, blades thundering against the gray sky. Inside, a man in a white coat turned from a console, his expression unreadable. "You've seen it, then," he said quietly. His badge read Dr. Marcus Heller, CRD Containment Division. Ethan's voice was cold. "If you're CRD, then you caused this." Dr. Heller sighed. "No. We tried to cure it. The great silence wasn't our creation, it was theirs." He pointed toward the clouds outside. "It started when the dead stopped dying. The signal came from above, not below." Olivia's breath caught. "Above?" Heller nodded slowly. "The world's great silence wasn't to stop an experiment. It was to stop the sky from speaking back." Lightning flared across the horizon, not natural lightning, but a pattern, pulsing like Morse code. And as they watched, the radio in the cockpit came to life again, whispering in a familiar, serene voice. "Genesis was only my echo." Ethan's grip tightened on his axe. The hum returned, stronger, deeper, as if the sky itself had begun to breathe. The helicopter soared above a gray, lifeless landscape, the fog clinging to the ruins like a shroud. Ethan, Maddie, and Olivia pressed against the cabin walls, watching the ground recede beneath them. The soldiers remained silent, their faces unreadable behind dark visors. Dr. Marcus Heller, the CRD scientist, studied a holographic display flickering with strange, undulating patterns, the same signal they had fought to destroy. "Above, the signal is originating from the stratosphere," Heller explained. "Not from the ruins, not from the dead. The source is atmospheric. It's as if the sky itself has become a transmitter." Ethan's hands tightened around his axe. "So all this, the pods, the machines, the zombies, that was just the beginning?" Heller nodded grimly. "Everything you encountered was a secondary resonance, a local amplification of a global frequency. The dead, the altered humans, they were carriers, conduits for the signal." Olivia swallowed hard. "Then what do we do? How do you stop it?" The scientist hesitated. "You don't. Not completely. But you can disrupt the resonance, scatter the signal temporarily. Enough to contain the spread, give humanity a chance to survive." The helicopter banked sharply as a violent pulse shook the air. Outside, the horizon cracked with bursts of lightning, not ordinary storms, but patterns that seemed deliberate, almost like the sky was riding in light. Ethan felt it in his bones. The hum had returned, far stronger than before, vibrating through the fuselage and rattling their teeth. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the horizon, impossibly tall, pale, and shimmering, eyes glowing red like Genesis's. But this one was larger, more imposing, as if Genesis had been only a fragment of its true form. The figure raised a hand, and the pulses of energy rippled outward in waves, shaking the helicopter violently. Maddie clutched her tablet. "It's coordinating the weather, the clouds, it's adapting." Ethan looked at Olivia. "It's not just Genesis. Whatever we faced underground, it's the real source now. The one calling the world to rise." The helicopter's engines strained against the waves of energy. One of the soldiers fired a missile at the figure, but it dissolved in midair, vaporized by a shimmering field of energy. Heller muttered to himself, "Of course, it's no longer bound to matter. It exists as pure frequency." Ethan took a deep breath. "If we can't hit it, maybe we can interrupt the signal." Heller's eyes widened. "You mean, use the briefcase technology?" "Yes," Ethan said. "We only used it once. If we reverse the polarity again, just like before, maybe we can overload it enough to create a feedback loop. It won't destroy it completely, but it could force it to retreat, or at least weaken it." Maddie frowned. "It's risky. That pulse nearly killed us before. If we do this midair, we might die instantly." Olivia's jaw tightened. Then we don't have a choice. Ethan nodded. Do it. Maddie worked frantically, reconnecting the briefcase to the helicopter's systems. The air hummed, the cabin vibrating as the machine synced with the world's ambient frequency. Outside, the red-eyed figure paused, tilting its head, sensing the incoming interference. The moment came. Maddie activated the counterpulse. A blinding wave of light erupted from the helicopter, cascading outward like ripples in a pond. The hum of the signal became a howl, a scream of energy that tore across the sky. The figure writhed, its form destabilizing, flickering between dimensions like a broken reflection in water. Lightning struck in jagged patterns, creating a symphony of destruction and resonance. The helicopter shook violently, nearly tearing itself apart. Ethan grabbed Olivia and held on as Maddie screamed over the roar of energy. Then, silence. The fog lifted. The pulse was gone. The figure had vanished, leaving only a faint shimmer in the clouds. The world beneath them was quiet, eerily quiet. No hum, no whispers, no undead rising. Even the ruined towns seemed to exhale, as if the planet itself was relieved. Heller turned from the console, pale but alive. It's over. For now. Ethan looked out the window, his chest heavy. Not gone, just waiting. Maddie slumped in her seat, exhausted. If it ever comes back, it'll be worse. The signal learned from us, it'll evolve faster next time. Olivia touched Ethan's arm. Then we make sure humanity is ready. We survive. We fight. The helicopter banked toward a distant city, sun breaking weakly through the clouds. Birds were beginning to return to the sky. Somewhere, a dog barked. The first real sound in years carried across the ruined world, small but defiant. Ethan held his axe loosely, eyes steeling. Whatever comes next, we'll be ready. And somewhere above them, high in the atmosphere, a faint shimmer lingered, like a pulse waiting to awaken. The great silence had ended, but the restless would always awaken again. The end.